Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Sit Heads Meditation Club. My name is John. I organize this group. Sit Heads is a sitting and social group for people interested in deep meditation practice. Everything we do is free and donation-based. If you want to hang out with us, you can find us at sit-heads.com, sit-heads.com. We don't have one set teacher, but we are lucky to have visiting teachers and other guests join us from time to time. So our guest tonight is Mirabai Bush. So Mirabai joined us last year. She was one of our very first, maybe our very first guest here at Sit Heads. It was amazing. She set a really high bar. So Mirabai is, as I'm fond of saying, one of the OGs of meditation in the West. She was at Neem Karoli Baba's ashram with Ram Dass and Larry Brilliant and Daniel Goleman and other luminaries in the 1970s. She helped Jack and Joseph and Sharon start the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. She was there at the University of Massachusetts when John Kabat-Zinn was doing his early work. She later co-created the curriculum for Google's Search Inside Yourself program, and she was one of the first people to teach meditative practices in sort of secular workplace settings. So I sometimes describe Mirabai, I don't know if to her face before, as in one sense at least, the sort of Forrest Gump of Western meditation. Anything important that was happening, Mirabai was there. She's in the photo. She is brilliant and hilarious, and I'm really, really happy that she's here with us. If you find this valuable tonight, and I suspect you will, I ask that you consider offering dana to Mirabai. Dana is a word that refers to donations given in the spirit of generosity and gratitude for these teachings. So I'm going to put in the chat a link to offer dana to Mirabai. If you are watching this on the Sit Heads webpage after it's been put up there, the video recording, there will be a link below to offer dana to Mirabai. So I'm going to throw all that in there. Mirabai, is there anything that you would like to say before we get started?
I would like you to agree tonight to carve my tombstone.
You want me to, did you say carve your tombstone?
Because you always say the best things about me.
Oh, you want me to write your epitaph?
Yeah.
I'll write your epitaph. I mean, look, we're probably gonna talk about death tonight, right? Because I know it's something that you have.
I just wrote a book about it, right?
You wrote a book about it, so we're gonna talk about it. But I'm very happy to be the author of your epitaph, Mirabai. I'll get to work on that right away. I'll make sure that I really bring my A game. All right. So the way that we do this is Mirabai and I are going to have a conversation for maybe the next 22 minutes till about the hour mark. That's my privilege to get to have a little private chat with Mirabai. What we find is that having a conversation beforehand sort of helps seed the Q&A, because you'll get a sense for who Mirabai is, the sort of stuff it might make sense to ask her. Plus, it's fun for me. So that's the most important thing. So we're going to have a little chat, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A from all of you. So start thinking during this conversation about the sort of things you might want to ask Mirabai. Does that sound okay, Mirabai?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Let's get this show on the road. So I have a few things I want to ask you about, but I guess since we already started talking about death, let's talk about death. That's a fun topic. You know, let's start with something light. So I guess here's the thing. Here's what I'm thinking about. You wrote a book called Walking Each Other Home with the late wonderful teacher Ram Dass, a dear friend of yours, about death, reflections on dying. And in every spiritual tradition that I can think of right now, death is hugely important, and we're often exhorted to reflect on our mortality, on the fact that our time here is finite, death is inevitable, certain, though the time of death is not. And the implication is that there's wisdom and even sort of solace to be found in that reflection. What I'm wondering is, for people who are young and fit and have been fortunate not to have any sort of obvious or overt brushes with death, or death enter their life in a way that stamps itself upon them, how can those sorts of people in that place in their lives partake of that wisdom? Because just sort of saying, I'm going to die, one day I'm going to die, I'm not going to live forever, I don't know how deeply that goes for someone. So is there a way to really penetrate into that wisdom without life itself kind of pressing it on you through circumstance or the passage of time?
Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. Again, I'm really happy to be with you. And well, Ram Dass is fond of saying that the best way to prepare for death is the best way to live your life, vice versa. That learning to be in the moment, that death is another moment. If you do these meditations where you imagine yourself literally dying, and then you're breathing in, you're breathing out, and you're making sure you're checking in on what it is you're still afraid of, what you're attached to, what regrets you have. But if you really imagine yourself actually dying and breathing in and out, it's true. You're alive, and then you take a breath and breathe out and you're gone. It is one more moment. And I've been doing this meditation. Ram Dass was into doing it too, or just like really imagining dying, lying in bed or sitting. It's fear falls away. You just be in the moment, right here, right now. We know how to do that. We don't do it all the time, but we know how to do it. These practices are teaching us how to do it. And that's the preparation for dying, so that you are dying fully present in that moment. And then, none of us know, including, I believe, the Tibetan masters, who seem to know a lot about what happens afterward. None of us really know what's going to happen, because we're not conscious of having been through it before. So that is the best preparation. So that's what we're doing, right? I mean, when back in the 70s, I recently come back from learning meditation in India, and Kala Rinpoche came to stay at our house, and great Tibetan meditation teacher, was a meditation teacher of the Dalai Lamas and so on. And there were a small group of us, and we were sitting around and asking him questions. Things are so funky in those days, Now with the Tibetans, it's always, with these fabulous rugs and hangings and tankas and so on, But then he was sitting on the bed, in our bedroom. We were sitting on the floor and asking him questions. And people were asking this and that. And I thought, I'm going to go for it and ask the basic. I said, why should we meditate? And he said, you should meditate to prepare to die. And I thought, well, I can try. I was in my early 30s. I thought I could put that off for a while, But over the years, I've come to really appreciate that that connection, that these practices that we do, the essence is that it it gives us the capacity for fully being in the moment, letting go of what we're afraid of, what we're attached to. And, you know, thinking about dying just focuses you on what it is you're afraid of. If you're afraid of things, including dying, you are not going to die in a peaceful way. And if you are attached and holding on, as most of us are to one extent or another, to this life and people we love in it, it's going to be hard. And so, yeah, it's a, for those of us who, I shouldn't say those of us, because next week is my 82nd birthday. So it's probably pretty close, but I mean, it's not, I'm healthy, but you know, when you're much younger and it's unlikely that you're going to die soon, the thing is that it is such, it's a very helpful way to focus, thinking about it, focusing on what matters to you right now in this moment. The freer you are of fear and attachment, the better you are going to enjoy this life.
Yeah. It sounds like it sort of goes in both directions, right? Like thinking about your death can help you make the best use of your time. And it sounds like you're saying that practicing mindfulness now is one of the best ways to prepare for your death. So
absolutely. Yeah.
You're sort of using death to prepare for life, and then you're reflecting on death to prepare for life, and then you're or to embrace life, and then you are using your life skillfully to prepare for your death.
Yeah, it is, after all of a piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. I mean, we could just talk about death the whole time, but I have other stuff. Folks will ask, questioners in the audience, ask Mirabai about dying some more.
Okay.
She wrote a book about it, and I want to hear more. And I want to hear more about it. All right, so I also wanted to ask you about Hinduism and Buddhism. So you have, a deep and rich history with Hindu practice or Hindu derived practices of various kinds. You were a devotee of, the great saint Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji. And I know that you're also a pretty serious, long time practitioner of Buddhist Vipassana practice and a student of Buddhist Dharma. I think you studied directly with S.N. Goenka. And when I read about Neem Karoli Baba, there's not a ton of talk about meditation or formal practice or training or instructions, and a lot more talk about love and service, and then just sort of extraordinary happenings, right, as a result of being in the presence of this being. Now, I think that most of the people who hang out in Siddhead circles probably understand better the Buddhist side of things and the side that involves step-by-step practice, gradual training, detailed instructions. What can those sorts of people, and I count myself among them, what can we learn from this more sort of heart-drenched path of Hindu-style devotion? And how can we get ourselves some of
that? We can just start right now. I love you. How's that?
I love you too, Mirabai. Thank you.
Well, when I tell the story a lot of times. When I went to India in 1970, I didn't know anything about meditation at all, and I was looking for a way to live on this planet in a way that made more sense from what I had experienced in the US during that time. But just as I got to India, Goenka was offering his first course for Westerners, we were called. And I, by chance, met Sharon Salzberg on the street in New Delhi. And she told me about this course that was going to be offered. And I went, and there were, I forget, 75 Westerners, Americans and Europeans there. And Goenka was teaching for the first time, teaching Westerners for the first time. And it was extraordinary. So his teaching was so clear. And he really, at that time, although he'd grown up Hindu himself and, and then been studied with great Buddhist masters, but he was really clear that he didn't want people to convert to anything, but he wanted to offer this practice that would help us wake up. And so that made it very easy, for Westerners. And as you probably know, he teaches it in these 10-day segments. And I'd never, ever done meditation or yoga or anything. And we started at 5 a.m. and it, was in silence all day long. There were 2 meals, and we ended like at 9 o'clock at night. And it was powerful and amazing. And Ram Dass was there, and a lot of people who later became teachers, Joseph and Sharon were both there, and many others. And at the end of that first course, we were so moved by what we were beginning to glimpse that we asked him if he would teach another one and another. And so we stayed he did 4 in a row for us. Then at the end of that time, and you all know from your first experiences of meditation, like the kinds of things that I was beginning to see. And was so, I'd been in the 4th year of my PhD in the West. So I was, very much a critical thinker. And this really opened up possibilities for me that I never dreamed were there. And then when we left, a group of us went with Ram Dass had been in India before. He went back to America. He wrote Be Here Now. And then it was published while we were in India this second time. He came back. And he had met Neem Karoli Baba, and now he wanted to try and find him. And part of the story of him was that you never knew where he was and you never knew how to find him. And so, but we chartered this bus, and a group of about 20 of us went looking, kind of. And the first big town we went through, Allahabad, we were just driving along, and someone on the bus called out, "Wait, what? There's Maharaji." He was by the side of the road in front of a Hanuman temple, just standing there. It was like the hardest person in the world to find, and there he was. And so everybody just piled out of the bus. And many of those folks had been with Ram Dass here before going over there. And I was one of the last people to get out of the bus. And when I saw him, all these ways in which I saw the expansiveness of the mind and heart and awareness through Goenka. When I saw him and was in his presence, I just felt like my understanding of what it could be to be human just got so much bigger. I can't, it wasn't rational. Just there was something about his vibrational field. I mean, we all know, we've heard about many saints and of different traditions. It was amazing. And so he was staying at the home of a university professor there, and we all went there. and we're with him, and it was amazing. And so I decided, I just really wanted to be with him more. And then later we stayed with him at his temples. I was going to stay in India for 2 weeks, I thought. By this time it was already, 6 weeks, but I stayed for 2 years because I was learning so much without he barely spoke. I mean, and he just talked in very simple phrases like, always tell the truth, love everyone, serve everyone. But his presence was so powerful. And many of the folks who showed up there, the Westerners, wanted to learn meditation or yoga. That's why they had come to India, right? And they wanted to get enlightened, and they wanted to know all these ways to do it. And Maharaji didn't teach any of that. But when people would say, but I really want to learn to meditate, he knew the English word course, which for him meant Goenka, go take a course. So he would send people off to Goenka. And when people wanted to learn yoga, he'd send them to the Shivananda ashram, but he never taught himself. The experience of being with him was it was so big. I mean, it was just that, and so loving. I mean, it was that space of where awareness and love are the same. You're there, you're not feeling, I mean, we went through all different kinds of stuff, but we glimpsed that space where, no thoughts, no emotions, no attachment, just there. And when you're just there, you can call it emptiness, or awareness or love. It's all the same. And that's my story. And I've been back here for 50 years trying to figure it all out. Figure out how to live a life based on that.
So I think, I can't speak for other people, but I know that when I hear that, I haven't really experienced anything like that. I've experienced wonderful things through my meditation practice and my contemplative practice, but what you're talking about seems like something else. Obviously, they're not unrelated to each other, but it's it just seems otherworldly, and in its power, and in the way that it doesn't sound like you did. I mean, it sounds like you learned so much, but in a way, it's almost like he just sort of reached in and sort of opened you up, right? Or something about his presence. It wasn't like you were sitting there practicing, letting go. He just sounds like he would just crack people open just through his sort of existence. Those of us living our sort of humdrum lives here in the West, or the States, or Canada, or Chile in the case of some of the other state heads, just wherever we are, is there any way for us to partake of that current? Or should we not worry about it so much and I feel like I've seen Duncan Trussell sort of ask something like this, where it's like, yeah, sounds cool for you, but is there a way that we can partake of this or have some taste of it or experience it? Or should we be content? Should we realize that sort of yearning for unearthly experiences isn't really super productive, and do our practice, and just put our noses to the grindstone and be happy doing our practice and cultivating mindfulness or whatever our practice is?
Well, first of all, no shoulds. Tim Leary used to say, I'm tired of being should upon. So, when we went to, in 1970, when we went to India, all of this was like so marginalized. It was so fringe, that for many of us, we needed something that would just really shake us free of a lot of preconceptions that we were holding. That's not so true anymore. I mean, you know many people you respect and love who, know that meditation and other practices are like valid and effective ways of, coming into truth. So that was part of it. I mean, I think for a lot of us, we needed to get, really woken up in that way, It's also, but then as I said, I've been back for 50 years and I'm doing these practices and trying to understand how that like basic teaching like plays itself out in in this world we live in, and which is really not very different from people who are doing that who didn't happen to be with an Indian saint. I mean, people around Ram Dass always ask that question. And I mean, he would say things like, there are great collections of stories and there are, all these videos of Ram Dass talking about Maharaji and so on. They're great stories of him in India. And those are, they're interesting to read in the sense that you get what I was just saying in the story, that there have been and probably are beings on this earth who have realized a certain level of, it's hard to talk about, like awakenedness, the Buddha, and it's possible. And what we think of as possible is so much smaller than what actually is possible. And I think that's the message they give us. That's the message the Buddha left us. It's not like I don't think you have to be with someone like that. Of course you don't have to be, or they'd be in every closet, but there's so many ways to wake up. And given our understanding of karma, you in this life, you are given exactly what you need to wake up. I need something a little dramatic.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I really like the idea that, maybe we don't need a Neem Karoli Baba in the same way, because we live in a world where there are meditation centers in every city and meditation books on every bookstore shelf, and it's a different world. It's a different world. Yeah, maybe he's trusting us to do it, to just sort of till our own fields and do our practice, and we have the tools. That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. We always would have this joking a conversation with Joseph and Sharon. We were all together and they didn't get on the bus, so it's like you're on the bus, you're off the bus. So they've always, because Sharon is she's such a love being. She always wonders, why didn't I get on that bus? But she didn't need to get on that bus, obviously.
That's wild, though. That's wild to think about. What if they'd gotten on that bus? All right. Well, I enjoyed this conversation, but I don't think I can justify monopolizing it any longer. I think we should open it up, if that's cool with you, and start taking questions. So go ahead and send me your questions. And we already have someone quick on the draw here. So, Stephen, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Thanks. Hi, Mirabai. Thanks for joining us again tonight. My question is, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can see you too.
Okay, great. My question is, what words of wisdom do you have for those who are considering the pilgrimage to the East, like visiting India and the different sites there? I understand that was kind of a key like happening for many of the folks in the cohort that you come from, that was the place where it all happened. And I know I personally have been considering it for a while, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that kind of journey.
They're mixed. I mean, this country's different now, still crazy, but and India is really different now. And as we all know, so but there was, I haven't been there since 2003. But I have a lot of Indian friends here who, especially in the tech world, so I'm staying in touch with that. But there was a magic about India in those years. And well, first of all, it was so radically different from here. And people seemed so much more focused on and like appreciative of the spiritual, that their lives were just drenched in it. Now, generations since then, it's somewhat changed, but culturally, it shook us awake in a lot of ways, which was really great. There are just so many sacred sites in India, so many amazing temples where you just walk in and it's like, whoa, where am I? Like really dropping into the, but, and so, yeah, I mean, there's still wonderful things to do there. I certainly don't think it's necessary for people to go to India. I mean, it's wonderful. And I'd have, I'd like plan for certain places that, you've heard would be great. And then also recognize that at least this used to be true, that whatever plans you make are going to be, they're going to be messed up in your course of being in India, because that's just the way of it. But yeah, India, Nepal, Japan. I mean, I went to Kyoto really only, I don't know, 7 years ago or something. Oh, really amazing. So yeah, follow your traveling heart to any of those places and design your time around, the sacred aspects of, yeah, it's wonderful.
Thank you. That's exciting. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Mirabai. Bernice, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Mirabai. And thanks, John. So when John asked the question or said that you were between also Hinduism and Tibetan Buddhism, I think I also relate with that quite a bit, because I was brought up as a Tibetan Buddhist. Like my mom was really into those practices. And the biggest question, I think it's, how in Hinduism or even in yoga traditions is there's a soul. And then in Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhism in general, there's no soul. And I think for me, even just growing up, because, I love yoga philosophies and practices, but I think that is quite conflicting for myself. So if there's anything you can.
Yeah, it's a like philosophical conflict between those two systems for sure. But when in your experience of sitting, quieting, getting in touch with that realm where, we think we experience soul or the absence of self, so absence of soul, of that sort of full emptiness of loving awareness, all the different ways in which Buddhism identifies it. I don't, just sitting in those spaces, I don't experience a conflict. I know that when there are philosophical discussions, there's, there is, because Buddhists would say there is no, there is no self or soul that is a something, that a discrete something of its own. But I think the important part for me is being able to dwell in that space that's not clearly part of the material world. And knowing that, that it's all more than who we are. It's more than our thinking mind. It's more than our emotions and experiences. It's more than that. What is that more than gets named different things. I mean, you haven't even mentioned God, but God's in there somewhere too, But so it's interesting to study the different ways in which people understand these. But I think in your own experience, you'll probably find that there's not a real conflict. Does that help?
Yes, for sure. And I think for you even saying that, it just like gives my intellectual mind a wake-up call. It's like, okay, stop using that mind to always try to differentiate what is what and putting a label on something. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bernice. Thanks, Mirabai. Daniel, do you want to ask Mirabai your question?
Sure. Thank you, Mirabai, for responding to my question. Many years ago, almost 30 years ago now, I experienced some trauma that almost killed me. And I've been clinging to my desire for justice over this situation for the last 30 years. And I've come to the realization that I probably will never be able to forgive these people, nor do I even want to forgive them. I realized that it wasn't the situation that caused my trauma, but my reaction to the situation that caused the trauma. But what I struggle with the most is clinging to some desire for justice, and that is causing me a lot of dukkha, a lot. And I want to let go of that clinging to that desire for justice. And I wanted some feedback from you on how I can do that.
It's more than a great question. It's your life, but it's also a good question. In Buddhism, equanimity is related to what we can control and what we can't control. Mm-hmm. And in as much as you can't, I'm assuming it has not been easy to get justice for this situation. That in as much as you can't, if you can work on it's not that you're giving up that this person or situation was really unjust. You can know that, but like giving up your attachment to the kind of justice out of your control, you can't make it happen. And so if you, as much as you can see that and just let it go and just see anything that you can make happen around it is honorable, good, wholesome work to do in this lifetime. But the part that you can't control is just, that becomes just attachment. There's nothing you can do about it. And so all you're left with are these feelings about it. So it's about like letting go slowly. I worked with some folks when they were first developing mindfulness-based trauma therapy, and the idea, and you may know more about it than I do, and the idea is to allow the incident, or in your case, this emotion around the injustice, sitting with it, feeling it in your body. Where do you feel it in your body? And then looking at it, feeling it for a little while, and then just like softening around it, letting a little bit of it go, and then going back to whatever the rest of your practice is. And then little by little, not all in one sitting, over time, because it's so, it can be so overwhelming that, you're never going to just let it go in one, sit down. Okay, I'm going to let that go now. That won't work. So, being gentle and letting go little by little. It's not that you're letting go of the of knowing that it was not just, knowing that it hurt you, but it's letting go of your clinging to, your attachment to that it is unjust, and that, it should be settled in as much as you can't settle it, or you'll die with it, and it'll make it hard.
Do you suggest I can take the same approach to the shame that's involved in this situation also? Because like I said, my struggle with the injustice is just one aspect of it. There's a lot of shame regarding what I could have or should, like you said, should, what I should have done. And I'm trying to get away from those shoulds. I'm trying to, substitute the word could. And should I take the same approach with the shame that's involved in it?
I would think so. Certainly the being very gentle with yourself, and sometimes maybe even evoking yourself as a child, so that you can feel that loving kindness and care for yourself. And then, in fact, you could, do metta practice for yourself first, and then then little by little let go of the shame, and then probably your compounding it. By now you're feeling shame that you haven't let go of your shame, or that you did feel shame then and you still feel shame and you haven't let go of the shame, like that. You want to gently and kindly, start letting it go. Anything that you can't do anything about, just letting it go. And
What do you feel about my unwillingness to forgive these people?
If that is really difficult, I would not worry about it now. I just try to let go of the rest of it. And that, maybe someday you'll come to that, but it sounds like you've been trying and it's not getting you anywhere. No. So I don't know that this is the classic response to that, but I would just let it go for now, and focus on, I feel like focusing on loving yourself and being kind to yourself, and knowing you've done at every moment in our lives, we've done the best thing we could have at that moment. Some of it is really messy, but that was the best thing you could do at the moment. Just imagining, yourself as if you were someone you love, a good friend or a child, how kind you would be to them, and you'd be saying the same things I'm saying to you, but you try saying that to yourself, just letting yourself be loving. And if it starts seeming like, oh, I can't do this. Just let it go and come back to it the next time, because you can do it, and you are lovable, and you are capable of loving your lovable self. I guarantee that. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you for sharing that. You look so beautiful right at this moment. Yeah. I'm imagining you loving yourself.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Mirabai. All right. Katie, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Hi, Mirabai. It's so great to be here with you. I'm really happy to meet you. I'm going to honor John's suggestion to ask you about death in a kind of roundabout way. So I'm part of a group that meditates on death once a month. It's called Death Sangha. And we do an hour death practice once a month. And those have been some of the most kind of like powerful, sort of supercharged aspects of my practice for the past year. But my question is about integrating that off of the cushion. And when you met Neem Karoli Baba, at some point you had to come back to the US and sort of like talk to regular folks. And I'm particularly after the death practice, I tend to feel like these kind of big openings have happened, and sometimes I'm extra emotional or extra sensitive or extra jazzed about meditation, and I want to just like tell strangers on the street that they should meditate. And I would just love to hear your thoughts on kind of healthy integration after a like serious practice or a big opening like that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, many of us who were there, came home and like, tried to with parents were the big thing. We actually soon after we started IMS in Barrie, the parents were horrified that their kids we weren't kids, that most of them graduated from college at that point. And they're particularly the parents of Jewish sons who they all had hoped would be doctors or lawyers, right? And I mean, Joseph had been at Columbia and, they'd all, and so, and here they were teaching meditation. So, we couldn't quite understand why didn't they get it? So, anyhow, we gave a retreat. Now, there's some wonderfully funny stories about that retreat, in which actually turned out to be quite successful. They did understand a lot better what we were doing, but it was funny, including transforming the library. There was a library then, into a smoking room because all the parents smoked. I mean, it was like, anyhow. So, but maybe part of that message is that whatever you have to communicate to anybody, a big part of that communication is tuning in to where the other person is. It's like I was an activist, social justice activist for years, and the first rule of activism is start where people are, so just tuning into where they are and trying to, you might be able to pick up something that they're thinking or talking about, that, and just sharing, oh, I had an insight about that just today because we were talking about dying, and, rather than this is the way you should die, so, and I know all the answers, that it just doesn't work. So, just tuning into the other person, and that's always important, even if you don't think you have anything to say, but it sure does. I'm part now of a small group of 7 of us, of Buddhist women over 75 who, who've done practice for a long time. And some of them are teachers like Sylvia Borstein and at Spirit Rock, and Pat O'Hara, Enkyo Pat O'Hara, who's runs a village Zendo in New York City, downtown. And Helen Twarkoff, who started Tricycle magazine, and others are just women who meditate but who are old. So, and the thing is that we realize that like we need each other to have this conversation. Like you need to, like your group, you need to identify it and say, this is what we're going to talk about. Or otherwise, I mean, it is the most elusive topic. And most people, most people are in denial as a coping strategy. They don't want to think about it. And so it's hard to bring up. But so I would do it in that way,
That's helpful. Yeah, we have a little Sangha chat where we talk to each other, and that's really important because it's so hard to describe how liberating it is to people who haven't done it because nobody wants to talk about it.
Listen, I know I wrote a book about it. I was like, you would love this book. It doesn't matter that you don't want to think about death. You love it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks, Mirabai. Rick, you're up, my friend.
All right. Mirabai, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can see you.
Okay. Great. Thank you for being here.
I can see your pronouns too.
I was wondering when you were describing being with Neem Karoli Baba and just the experience of love, of like being in that presence, it made me think of in my own life, whether I'm in a situation where someone is very clearly offering me love or in a situation where it's just a new setting with strangers. There's often kind of an obvious choice to be more open, whether it's in physical posture or otherwise, like just to be open to the love that's there or not to be. When I'm aware, there's a choice. And when I'm not, then it's subconscious and I'm not open. So I was wondering, how since having that experience, what is it like for you to be open, or, do you struggle with it? And if you do struggle with it, how do you kind of practice openness, or what's your wisdom around that?
Yeah, I'm not a good person to ask this because I'm a little helpless. I mean, I really, I so easily /love people. And I remember this one time where I was running the Center for Contemplative Mind, and our mission, we started in 95, and our mission was to bring these practices into mainstream secular settings. At that time, people in organizations, anyhow, were not doing it. The only place you'd find it would be in health and healing because of the work John was doing already, but nobody else was doing it. So one of the areas we wanted to work in was business. Nobody was doing it then in business. And it was, there are a lot of big questions about that remain. But anyhow, I didn't want to do it. And I had strong preconceptions about who these people were. And but I went anyhow, and I went with a really good teacher, and we gave a retreat it was a 3-day offsite retreat. And there were these business executives, and they came in their suits and on their private jet and stuff. But by the end of the 3 days, the magic had happened. It was really beautiful. We saw them in vulnerable moments. We saw that they really did want to be good people and lead a good life. And they were, like most of us, unsure about how to do that. And they were really appreciative. Anyhow, after it, then I got on the plane, and I live in Western Massachusetts. So the airport is Hartford, and flying into Hartford's almost always like insurance executives, So these guys got on the plane. Oh, and Anna was flying so much in those years, I was upgraded to first class. So onto first class comes all these like insurance executives in their suits and everything. And usually I just like bring my book up to my face and like not want to, make eye contact or have any conversations with anybody. And that day, I just still remember, it was so long ago. That day I looked up and I saw them, and it was like my heart just burst open. I thought, oh, so nice to be with you all. They weren't the same guys, but I had broken through. That's so it's possible. They still had really boring conversations. But so about cultivating that capacity for opening to others, there's nothing better than metta practice. You guys do that, right? Yeah. It's just so powerful. I used to think, what could it really do, especially with somebody I really didn't like, but it's really powerful. So it really does open your heart. And that, which is very similar to what I, experienced with Neem Karoli Baba. And about knowing how and when to express it is, it's tricky. I think, again, it has to do with, cultivating an awareness of the environment and the people and who's there, not so that it freezes you, but like, so that you don't want to make people uncomfortable. There's somebody who you really think you could really love. But if it comes on too strong like that, then you just make someone uncomfortable, which is not what you want to do. So again, it's like cultivating your awareness of others. Meditation practice cultivates your self-awareness and awareness of others. So that, and then listening for the best way to express it, and using, you don't have to, if you're in a group or a meeting or something, you don't have to do a formal metta practice, but, you can breathe in and out of your heart, and, being here in the moment, in your loving heart. And then you're more likely to be there in a loving way. And then when it's appropriate to express it, it'll be right there ready to go. I don't know if that answers your question, but
that's very helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Imagining you in those places. But, and, don't worry. If you're gonna err on this one side or another, go for the loving side. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? That someone thinks you're goofy, or they don't respond or whatever. It's not the worst thing in the world. Closing your heart to others is, Maharaji one time said, you can if you get angry or you feel injustice, by the way, do what you need to do, but never put anyone out of your heart. So you want to keep that loving heart always present.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you,
and
Rick.
You'll make mistakes. I have to admit, I am with someone I've been with for the last 30 some years, but he is my third husband. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mirabai. Thanks, Rick. He's an amazing cook, though.
Oh, my God. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Why we've been together so long.
That's the ace in the hole. That's how you make sure there's no fourth husband. Lynn, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Thanks, John. Um, Hi, Mirabai.
Hi.
Forgive me, I am very nervous right now because I'm not sure how to ask my question, but let's see. Okay, so so this question is related to death. Recently, I went through a very dramatic experience where I lost pretty much like all that I had at the time, and many more things, and it was very painful. And like I realized that the reason why it was so painful because I held on to a certain belief, perception of who I was at the time so hard. And in order to cope with it, I had to completely let go. And I did just that. I meditated a lot. That was my mantra pretty much every second of the day, to let go, to let go. And in a lot of ways, it felt like I had to die in order to continue living, if that makes any sense.
Of course it does.
And since then, I was able to overcome that experience. But since then, it's been very hard to continue engaging with life because I felt like I already died. Like I no longer have a clear sense of who I am anymore. And that makes it very hard to interact with the world because I feel like there is almost like no one or nothing for like ideas to hold on to or for like people to interact with. And I do not think that this is healthy, but I don't know how to get through this phase of my life. So I was wondering if you have any tips for that. And I hope that my question was not very vague. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for the suffering that it's caused. I hear it. Yeah. Well, you know, but at the emotional and social level, and I mean that like your life with friends and everything that was in your life, it's really hard to feel like it's all gone and you know that you don't know who you are anymore. But the spiritual level, of course, that is seen as a gift. You know, the Buddha left home, right? He left his family. Then he had these ideas about how to get enlightened, and they were all wrong, you know, and he had to let go of everything and almost died. And then he ate rice pudding and he came back. So, and in every spiritual tradition, that's the thing, you know, like dying, letting it all go, and then seeing what's there. And of course, it might feel like, you know, you don't know what's there, but just starting right with where you are. And I mean, just hearing you share what you did, that's big. You know, it's big that you can put it into words and you can say it to me, you know, that's not nothing at all, you know, and those are, you know, steps toward wanting to be fully here in this life. And, you know, it's as you rebuild and re-understand who you are and who you're not, you know, you have now this opportunity to like kind of become who you want to be, you know, to really listen deeply to what's there. I mean, there's that level at which there's no self, but there's also, you know, each of us is here for a reason. And just listening to what that is and what's, you know, what you're drawn to what it is in yourself that you honor and appreciate, and cultivating that. And hearing you talk, it may be hard in this state to be communicating and forming friendships and so on, but that's important. Having other people, other humans, who everybody knows suffering. Not everybody knows, those times when it's just stripped down and like you're describing. Not everyone's been through that, but everyone knows suffering. And everybody knows that, we all want to be happy. You want to be happy. Me too. And so the meditation practice is really important, because that's going to lead you to see what is there and what you do want to love and cultivate, help grow in yourself. But it's also important to have others you can share that with, and, who can remind you that you are, a human going through what we go through. And as Thich Nhat Hanh used to like to say, you are perfect just the way you are. And you could use a little improvement. But don't forget the perfect the way you are. It's true. It's true. It's not just a, throwaway line. It's absolutely true. You are exactly where you should be at this very moment. How great, and out of it, you have this opportunity to, become this glorious human being, which you already are, but you can't quite see it yet, Does that help at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can tell from we cried so much right now. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You don't have to say anything, but yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's really beautiful. I'm really touched by it. Love you.
Thank you, Mirabai. Thank you, Lynn. Really, thank you for sharing. And it's really been, I know you just started hanging out with us recently, but it has really been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you in this group. So that was the last question. So what that means is there's an opportunity for folks to ask questions if they want to. So here's your chance. In fact, if you've already asked a question and you would like to ask a second question, normally I would never tolerate such a thing. But tonight, you may ask, aha, here we go. But yeah, send them my way. We got a little time left. So, okay, so it sounds like we've got a quick one from Caroline, and then Fred, I've got you. I think Caroline just wants to say hello, which sounds really nice. So Caroline, I'm going to bring you up here so you can say hello to Mirabai.
Hi, Mirabai.
Hi.
It's really nice to meet you this way and to hear you. And I'm just really excited and grateful to be in your presence tonight. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you.
Is that a Save shirt you have on? I can just see the... Wow. That's so great. Yeah. I've been thinking about it a lot recently. Yeah.
All my favorite people seem to have gotten on the bus. I'm a huge fan of like the Grateful Dead, but also Larry Brilliant and Neem Karoli, and of course Ram Dass. So it's really cool to get to talk to you and to hear you. So thank you.
That's great. I was in thinking about Maharaji. He's not here, but and I don't know of so many like fully enlightened beings, walking around these days. But there are some great teachers. And so for those of you who, are saying, do I need to be with somebody like that, or can I be with someone like that? There's some great teachers, and there's some of the Tibetan Buddhist teachers who, like have studied for 50 years and with great masters, and some of whom were born in Tibet. And some of them are really wonderful, but there are quite a few different teachers in different traditions. And then, of course, people in your life who don't identify as teachers, but who just, being with sometimes like shakes it up a little bit, and you begin to learn, a different way of being in the world. But I'm glad you love Seva. That makes me really happy. I'm also, after all these years, spiritual friendship is so important, friendship in general, but on the spiritual path, how the Buddha said to Ananda said, Buddha, I heard that, or I think that spiritual friendship, it must be half of the spiritual path. It's so important to me. And Buddha said, no, that's not right. He said, spiritual friendship is the whole of the spiritual path. So, it's, I've been doing a podcast with not random people, but like a range of people who are all doing, different practices and have had different teachers and so on, and just talking to each other about, just how we are making our way through the world now and what's helping us wake up. And because we need each other. We need each other. We can really help each other. And Seva, which is, for the rest of you, when Neem Karoli Baba told us to serve everyone, when we got back here, it was like, what does that mean? And so some of the folks who were there were trained in the medical profession, but we were all really young. Like Larry Brilliant, just out of medical school, he'd never practiced. He was the hippie doctor for the hog farm going overland, and Maharaji sent him to be on the team that ended smallpox. As you probably know now, the only infectious disease ever to be ended. But and so a group of us decided we form this organization after smallpox was over, and to serve. And we called it Seva, which means service in Sanskrit. And we chose, of all the things we could have, blindness in Asia. And so it's a long story. And we didn't have any money at all. And the Grateful Dead was our house band, and they started doing concerts for us. And then over years, like all these other musicians did concerts. And Seva has restored sight to 5 million people, starting with no money and a funky band. And so that's partly about, you can do a lot with the right intention. And intention also for your practice, is the most important thing. And but going back to friendship, so those of us who started Seva, then, after some years, it became clear that Seva needed to be diversified in lots of different ways from the founders. And so many of us stepped off the board and we're on the advisory board and stuff. But then we realized that we missed each other. And so the one weekend we were all together, and the men of Seva were all watching the Super Bowl. And the women of Seva said, let's sit and talk to each other, And so ever since then, every year we've had a retreat together of the founding women of Seva. And now, of course, it's online. But those friendships, and there are a lot of different kinds of people, those friendships over all these years have been like such a guiding force for me particularly in terms of the learning the spirit path of recognizing our interconnection and serving each other, because we're not separate from each other. So I'm just putting in a strong pitch for your friendships with each other. And that's why I love that you do this together, that you sit together and that you honor like whatever it means, deep sitting. If it just means that you're not just doing like 5 minutes of mindfulness so that you can stay more focused at your job, then, it's wonderful that you all are doing what you're doing together, and keep on and stay in touch with each other. That's my wish for you. Thank you, Caroline. That was great. Thanks for wearing the shirt.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Mirabai. I think we are at our last question, which comes from Fred. Fred, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Hi. Right speech. Been working on it for maybe a year, I guess.
Good.
So no lying, no useless speech, no gossiping. So basically, I don't talk to anyone at work anymore. It does get lonely sometimes, but most of the times I don't really mind. But I was just wondering if you had any idea on how to deal with that.
Yeah. I think that right speech identifies those areas because those are the ones we fall into most unconsciously. Gossip, but with people who you work with or people you don't have an intention to, talk about kinds of things we're talking about tonight. You can always ask what they're into. What are you thinking about? What do you do on the weekend? Or, it doesn't, that's not really gossip. And then you can ask them more questions, and as long as you're being truthful and kind and, and saying what's appropriate, at the appropriate time, not noticing something about them that they really need to improve and just laying it on them, but really listening, for what they care about. And that's, a way because that kind of, even if it's to some extent superficial banter, is important when people are in any community together. You're saying, I'm human, I'm in here, are you in there? And you inevitably, if you start asking people what they're into, then things will come up where there's commonality, and then you can begin to talk about that. And what you're really saying to each other is, yeah, I'm here, I'm, like all beings, I want to be happy. I don't want to suffer. I suffer in these ways that are a little bit like the way you're suffering. And, I just want to share that with you so that you know that when we, here we are together and we're doing this common work, whatever it is, that there are ways in which as humans, we're sharing an approach to this work or why we care about it. I used to do this great practice I did it one time for the Federal Trade Commission when they were having trouble with, they're having issues around equity and diversity. And so everybody came to the meeting and brought an object, and then everyone used that object to say why they were all lawyers, why it was that they chose public interest law, because they could all have been making a lot more money in private practice, why it was. And then each person told their story, and they had never talked to each other like that before. They would talk about cases and, but they, someone brought, it's hard to remember now, but something that his grandfather had given him, someone else, like the first time I witnessed injustice of any kind, and so on. And the one person of color who was in the room told the story about growing up as a child in a military family, and how she had to keep changing schools all the time, and how one time she was in third grade or something, and the boys at the next desks threw a paper airplane at her with the N-word on it, and how hard that was for her, and how, and so on. And it had never come up before, but there were problems around diversity and equity in the workplace. But she just told that story. And then after it, many people were able to, talk to her in a much more open, meaningful way than before. So I'm not saying you should do that practice, but I do see that, if you can touch the kind of human, normal place in people, then you can, begin to develop a relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So useless speech is not like, it's only useless when it doesn't make love with people. So
everything you say can be honest and timely and compassionate, and I forget the other. Mm-hmm. But all of that, no matter what you say, all that can be part of it. So just keep the right speech process in mind when using speech to connect.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. All right. So we are right on time to wrap up. Good for us. So Mirabai.
Yeah.
What can I say? This ruled. This was great. It's always really nice to be with you. I'm continually amazed at how good this sort of video chat milieu is. I know we're all kind of sick of it, but it actually does sort of work.
Yeah. But that's been one of the few blessings of COVID, is that we've learned how to be online with each other in this way. Yeah, it's great. Otherwise, I'd never be with you guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this was incredible. I do just want to, one more time, I want to plug Mirabai's most recent book. It's called Walking Each Other Home, co-authored with the late Ram Dass, a book of reflections on dying. I also want to plug Mirabai's podcast. It's a relatively new podcast, I think, also called Walking Each Other Home, where she gets to talk with people from a bunch of different interesting walks of life. You talked with John Densmore, right? The drummer from The Doors. That's cool.
Yes. This is the first one I did. It was totally cool. It's really
cool. And I know you talked with Dr. Larry Brilliant, and the amazing Rhonda McGee, the lawyer and law professor.
Two women, Hawaiian spiritual elders, which is really a great one.
Oh, that's super interesting.
It's coming up. Yep.
Excellent. Yeah.
Now Network. You'll find it. Okay. It's on YouTube also, these days.
Yeah, probably wherever people listen to their podcasts, I'm sure they could dig it up. But yeah, it's on the Be Here Now Network. And that's it. Any final words from you, Mirabai, before we wrap up?
No, just that I really loved being with you all. Thank you so much. Really, I loved it. And may you all be happy and free from suffering and safe from COVID.
Yeah, with that, let's say good night. Thank you, Mirabai. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.